The Jews are moving to rebuild the third temple. There's no question about it. And you ask yourself, is this relevant? Is this prophetically significant, what they're actually moving to do? And I can answer that with a resounding absolutely. You better believe this is significant. The prophetic implications can't even be measured. It is that intense. However, what do we do with that? What do we do with that reality in light of what we studied in our last message, which, if you remember, there are things that we learned about the third temple that are immovable. Things that cannot be altered, cannot be changed, such as only the Mashiach builds the temple. Only the Mashiach builds the temple. The prophets are very clear on that. We learned about the fact that the third temple, it's not earthly, it is in fact heavenly. It's not temporary, it's eternal. So you think about this reality of what we have, and so you take that information, you juxtaposition what is happening in Jerusalem today, and what do? How are we supposed to understand this on a prophetic level? And as I said before, there's only one answer to that. You can only understand this through the lens of the new covenant. You can only understand this through the lens of Yeshua. With that said, I want to take you back to the 2nd century, early 2nd century. We have Emperor Hadrian. He's emperor at this time, and it's important to understand something about his reign. At the front end of his reign, Emperor Hadrian's relationship with the Jewish people is amazing, or at the very least, favorable. And why do I say that? Do you know that he actually granted permission for the Jews to rebuild the third temple? Amazing. He grants them that permission, but then something happened that today has mystified historians. Mystified them. They didn't even know how it happened, where a light switch got flicked off. Something happened to where his heart towards the Jewish people completely radically changed into a 180, where he started walking in the footsteps of Antiochus Epiphanes, the very one that the book of Daniel identifies as an antichrist. The one who, interestingly enough, came in, as the Jews perceived, peaceably at the front end, only to find out all hell would be unleashed. He started a war against the Torah. He made war against Shabbat. He made war against circumcision. He made war against the dietary laws. Everything in the Torah that by which a Jew would identify with, by which God was called them to be. It's to be their identity of who they are. All these righteous commandments, they were all under assault by the spirit of Antichrist, by Antiochus Epiphanes. What I'm going to tell you right now, if you hold Hadrian up side by side with Antiochus, you can't tell the difference. Hadrian starts out, it seems to be peaceable, but then something happens. The spirit of Antichrist enters him, and guess what he does? He wages a war against the Torah. He wages a war against Shabbat, not allowing them to study it. Wages a war against circumcision, against the purity laws. He comes against all of these things. Well, what do you think is going to happen when you do that? Well, just go back in history to discover that. You look at what happened to Antiochus as he waged a war against the Torah, against the Jewish people. He wants war. It is war he is going to get. Because at that time, a man by Mattathias rises up and revolts. And his son carries out the revolt, who we now know as Judah Maccabee. And Judah fights the wars of the Lord and actually destroys the Seleucid army, takes back Jerusalem, takes back the Temple Mount, and purifies it. That's exactly how this story goes. Because a man comes on the scene known as Shimon Bar Kokhba. He comes on the scene and he leads a Jewish revolt. Now, there's a few things about him that you need to understand. Number one, the rabbis record that this guy had a magnetic personality, talented, gifted, an unbelievable leader. People were attracted to him. He's charismatic. He had all of this going for him. Even traditions got a little wild, saying he could just rip out a tree, roots and all, out of the ground. I mean, just amazing things that are said about him. But this guy led an army that wasn't a normal army. And this is significant for today, so listen to me carefully. His army wasn't a bunch of barbarians. His army wasn't secular Jews. They were religious. And we know this from those letters at Nahal Hever, near the Dead Sea. We know they were religious. This was more of a zealot movement. Rabbi Akiva, one of the most notable rabbis that have ever existed in Judaism, he declared Bar Kokhba to be the Messiah. He's HaMashiach. He is the one. He is the Messiah. And the people bought it. He believed it. Now, why in the world would they believe that? What would happen? How could they come to that conclusion? What was one of the primary things that the Jewish people are waiting for in regard to Mashiach ben David? He is going to fight the wars of the Lord, and he will conquer. And here you have the situation. You have the spirit of Antichrist moving, clearly going against Torah, all the principles of Torah, everything by which Jews identify with, right? He's coming against this, and Bar Kokhba goes in and literally routs the Roman Empire. Not the whole Roman Empire, but out of Judea, out of the land of Jerusalem. He purges them. An unthinkable victory. It was supernatural. What Bar Kokhba did was absolutely seen as the greatest wonder. That clearly God must be one. He won this victory. He's the Mashiach. He's the Messiah. So he takes Jerusalem. He takes the Temple Mount. What is left? What is left for the Messiah to accomplish? If you're the Messiah, what are you expected to do? Rebuild the temple. Now keep in mind, Bar Kokhba has possession of Yerushalayim. He has it. And guess what he does? He proclaims, it's time. We're going to rebuild it. But here's where things get interesting. Does that happen? Actually, Rome amasses an army that is unprecedented against Bar Kokhba. In fact, the emperor was so terrified by how great of an army that he had that he sent an unprecedented half of Rome's army after him. And to put this into perspective, when Rome destroyed Jerusalem the first time, and according to Josephus, over 1 million Jews died. When he sent in the Roman Empire, he sent in, is estimated 4 legions. He sends 3 times that amount after Bar Kokhba. When Bar Kokhba falls, this is just as a side note, he falls in Batar on the 9th of Av. So get this. The first temple by the Babylonians falls on the 9th of Av. The second temple by the Romans, when they came in, falls on the 9th of Av. Here you have Bar Kokhba going to build the third temple, and he falls on the 9th of Av. Now, to further put this in perspective, the Roman historian Dio Cassius, now keep in mind what we're about to read. This is not Jewish commentary. This is not biblical commentary. This is Roman commentary, okay? The Roman historian, he says this: 580,000 men were slain in the various raids and battles. Make no mistake, he's talking about the Jews. And the number of those that perished by famine, disease, and fire was past finding out. Thus nearly the whole of Judea was made desolate. The whole of Judea. Now you think about that, 580,000, and then an incalculable amount beyond that. So we could safely say, we could estimate, it might be the numbers that we would have heard happened in 70 AD by Josephus. Over 1 million Jews have perished. Think about that. That's incredible. And then he goes on to say this: a result of which the people had forewarning before the war. Now, this isn't a Jewish commentator looking in hindsight 20. This is a Roman commentator saying there were signs. There were signs that calamity was coming. And they didn't see him. As Dio Cassius goes on, he gives this, he gets into the forewarnings that they had. And this is what he says: for the tomb of Solomon, which the Jews regard as an object of veneration. And that's important, an object of veneration. You're going to need to shelf that. We're going to come back to this. What happened to it? It fell to pieces of itself and collapsed, and many wolves and hyenas rushed howling into their cities. And so this whole concept of what I talk about, that they're following this false Messiah, they have this veil down. Even Roman historians are looking and saying they were so blind, there were signs, evidence signs, that were clear. The very objects that you adored are falling, they're crumbling. And hyenas and jackals running around howling. Did you not see that this portended, that this was the foreshadow of calamity? You didn't see this. The veil was over their eyes. Do you know what they called Bar Kokhba before it was all said and done? Bar Kokhba. What? Why did they call him that? It means son of a lie. Son of a lie. They recognized he was a false Messiah. We just followed a false Messiah. One of the greatest tragedies in Jewish history happened because they believed he was the Mashiach. I wonder if these Jews would have believed in Yeshua. And we know these were Orthodox in the mindset. These are not Messianic Jews. I wonder, had they listened to Yeshua, how different that outcome would have been. Because this is what Yeshua says. Look at what he says. Matthew 24, verse 5. For many will come in my name saying, Ani HaMashiach, I am the Messiah, and will deceive many. And so you look at Bar Kokhba's revolt and all his amazing, his glorious army, all these religious Jews following him, wanting this, who didn't listen to Yeshua, whose fathers didn't listen to Yeshua. They couldn't see that he was a false Messiah. Yeshua goes on in verse 23, then if anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ, or there, do not believe it, for false Christs and false prophets will rise and show great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. See, I have told you beforehand, put yourself in the historical context where you're suffering at the hands of Hadrian. There's no question he has the spirit of Antichrist. A great Jewish leader rises up who everyone reveres, that even the religious leaders are calling this, who? HaMashiach. He's the Messiah. He's the Messiah. And then he fights the wars of the Lord and he accomplishes the impossible, being victorious over Rome. It's unthinkable. See, but if they had backed up, if they had listened to Yeshua, as soon as Bar Kokhba was starting to be hailed as the Messiah, that's when you say, I'm getting off this train. I'm done. Because Yeshua warned me. As we look at this Bar Kokhba event, what I want you to take away in regard to this story is this, and this is critical. Prior to calamity coming upon them, two notable things happened. Number one, there was a move to rebuild the third temple. And number two, there were signs. There were signs confirming the calamity.
Hey there, this is Mike at Corner Fringe Ministries. Thanks for watching our video. If you liked the video or it encouraged you, do us a favor. Hit the like button. Don't forget to hit the share. And if you haven't done so already, please hit the subscribe button. Now, if you want to watch the rest of this video, hit the button here. And if you want to watch the rest of this series, you can check it out here. And don't forget, you can download the Corner Fringe Ministries app today on any of your Play stores. Thanks for joining us at Corner Fringe Ministries.